Patrick Cook here. Hey, thanks for joining me on Devlog number 3 of Project GBPL. Project GBPL explores how 3D game technology can be leveraged to help learn photography. You know, I've been involved with photography for a lot of years, most of my life, film cameras, digital, and even teaching photography. And what I've realized over the years, as I'm sure a lot of people have, is that snapping photos is easy. Learning photography is not so easy. Well, I mean, when you consider, there are camera relationships to understand, all such as exposure. There is usually a time separation between assimilating theory and practicing photo making. We tend to not use our photos to self-assess our own photography skill, which tends to slow skill development in our photography. The camera is an instrument that is transported by human carrier. The physical nature of photography is not always conducive to learning photography. You know, to add to this, camera manufacturers tend to design their digital cameras to be all things to all people, which makes the camera seem complex and intimidating for many camera owners. Camera manufacturers routinely market the features of their cameras, which tends to create a gear-focused approach to camera ownership, which in turn conditions us to believe that the quality of our photographs is somehow related to the number of camera functions. You know, and modern digital cameras are easy to switch into auto mode, which serves to stall our learning photography. You know, the camera of the mobile device has convinced us that learning photography is no longer necessary. Indeed, computational image processing is negating photographic creativity. Photographs are becoming more the work of the camera rather than our creative work. Snapping photos is easy. Learning photography is not so easy. For those who want to be photographic creators rather than shutter button operators, the challenge is how to learn photography as a skill, not merely as an activity. Developing skill in photography is not done by just taking photos. It's done by deliberately creating photos that tell stories, that have meaning, and that are not merely a visual recording, that reflect the depth of what we see through the viewfinder. But as we pursue skill development in photography, how can we move past passive video learning? How can we improve upon printed books that display scores of images as if viewing another's photos develops skill? These are limitations of the medium, but can we do better? With rapidly maturing 3D game technology, perhaps we can utilize game-based simulation to create an interactive, scalable, and entertaining learning situation. Game-based simulation enables learner participation, self-assessment, and combines the teaching content with the practice opportunities in the same learning environment. The 3D game is highly visual, user-controlled, entertaining, and we have free game development software tools at our disposal. So, can 3D game simulation be the next teaching frontier for photography skills? That's the question that Project GBPL addresses. This devlog introduces 12 ways that 3D game simulation can help develop photography skills. Let's go. Number 1, eliminates camera intimidation. A physical camera is designed to provide an array of functions that exist whether you are able to use them or not. This implies that the physical camera assumes you know how to use it fully, which is often intimidating. However, you are expected to not know how to use a virtual camera in a learning environment, which reduces camera intimidation. In addition, camera intimidation is further reduced during the learning effort by sequencing the inclusion of camera feature topics into the learning process as the learner is ready for them. The goal is that the camera intimidation is minimal when the learner handles a physical camera. Number 2, narrows the topic scope to control complexity. Game-based simulation lends itself to rolling out additional topics when the learner has shown a readiness for them. This is in contrast with passive teaching, such as video, where the video author decides in advance when the learner should proceed to the next topic, ready or not. While the video viewer can pause the video playback or alter the content sequence by skipping to other lessons, the teaching content itself is predetermined. In addition, game-based simulation narrows the learner's photography activity compared to the real world by allowing the learner less freedom than in the real world. Learning complexity is controlled to optimize learning. As the learner acquires skills in the virtual learning environment, the simulation can be designed to have less restrictions. Number 3, reduced time between theory acquisition and skill practice. In a simulation, the shortened time span between assimilating concept material and practicing the concepts promotes rapid application of theory, which ideally results in faster skill development. This shortened theory to practice time span reduces the tendency to forget theory that the learner hasn't yet applied. This is especially beneficial compared to learning photography with traditional medium, such as video or books, which have a longer time span between reviewing the topic and practice. Number 4, creates an immersive learning situation. A well-designed simulation tends to hold the learner's interest longer due to the learner interacting with the learning experience. This includes exercising some control over the learning sequence. As such, the learner is more likely to remain engaged in the learning situation longer than compared to a passive learning situation, such as a video or a book. Number 5, integrates learning materials with practice opportunities. Imagine a physical camera manufacturer tapping into the power of the digital camera's computer to help the camera operator learn photography while using the camera. Game-based simulation integrates the learning material into the same domain as the practice environment. Even though it's simulated, theory and practice are merged into the same domain, which promotes better retention by rapid theory to practice. Number 6, helps break the snapshot habit. In real-world photography, taking photos is the dominant activity, which tends to shift the camera user away from learning photography to making photographs. The value of the images in a simulated situation serves as learning assessment, not having a value beyond learning feedback. The goal in a simulated learning environment is that learning becomes the dominant activity, with the images serving as assessment tools of the learning progress. Number 7, eliminates the expectation that photos must be of high quality. We expect the quality of our photos to be in direct proportion to the cost of our physical camera. In addition, the physical camera, by its nature, suggests that our photos must be good. At least that's what the camera manufacturers want us to believe. Game-based simulation eliminates the expectation that the images produced in the game environment need to be good. This is because it is understood that we are in learning mode, not in a picture-taking mode. The photos in a simulation don't need to be good, rather are a measure of skill development. Number 8, encourages risk-taking and experimentation. Game-based simulation eliminates the risk of failure, where failure is defined as in-game images that are of low compositional quality. However, in a simulated learning environment, the quality of in-game images is an assessment of skill development, which is important feedback to the learner. Like an aircraft piloting simulator, crashing the simulation doesn't have the dire consequence of the real thing. Learning is actually enhanced because of the low risk. Game-based simulation helps keep the learner in the mode of learning because failed images are part of the learning process and failed images have no negative consequences. Number 9, encourages learning by de-emphasizing the gear. The physical camera is an instrument that requires an understanding of its functions to maximize its multifunctional purpose. However, by their very existence, camera functions suggest that they each need to be understood. This promotes focusing on the gear, which tends to confuse and intimidate those who are still in learning mode. However, game-based simulation can introduce camera behaviors when the learner is ready, based on learner performance or request. As such, the learning environment can maintain a focus on learning photography, not the gear. Indeed, the gear is virtual, which helps the learner focus on photography in general. Number 10, yields learning progress to the learner. With game-based simulation, we have the means to author teaching tools that use interactivity to encourage engagement. Interactivity allows the learner to guide the learning pace, with no negative consequences for a slow pace. Neither are there fabricated rewards for a fast pace, which could actually diminish the learning experience. This, of course, assumes that the learning simulation is freed from the constraints and expectations placed on it by an author. For example, in passive learning materials such as books and videos, the author assumes the teaching sequence and pace without knowing the individual learner. By contrast, with a well-designed game-based simulation, the learner's progress itself advances the topics. Number 11, entertains to make learning attractive. Assuming that the learning objective of the game-based simulation is attended to, the resources of the simulation can be leveraged to provide a degree of entertainment, which helps keep the learner engaged. The longer the engagement, the greater the learning opportunity. Having a bit of fun while learning helps establish a positive attitude towards the subject. In addition, an engaging learning experience contributes to a positive outlook on the subject while it is practiced. In this case, photography. Number 12, encourages learner self-assessment. In game-based learning, the learning activity itself is the assessment. This is because the learner has immediate feedback of skill development. When constructed well, the game-based simulation is both a learning and a self-evaluation environment. Photography is unique in that the learner can assess their progress by the images produced. And with the short theory to practice time span, the learner can self-assess quickly. No retention test is needed due to the short theory to practice time span as well as self-evaluation. In a game-based simulation, tests are not required to evaluate the teacher because the teaching content has been embedded into the game simulation. Thus, testing provides no value in assessing the teaching effort. Self-evaluation is private, which eliminates the burden of trying to learn at a pace decided by an author or a system or a procedure. Furthermore, the pace of the learning in a game-based learning environment should never be an assessment factor because that removes control from the learner. There should be no negative consequences for slow skill development, which eliminates an unnecessary pressure on learning. All that matters is that the learner using the game-based learning tool can eventually translate skills learned in the simulation to skills in real-world photography, allowing the learner to achieve that objective in their own time and at their own pace. Well, thank you for joining me in Devlog number 3, where I outlined 12 ways that I believe game-based simulation can help learn photography. The goal is to leverage 3D game technology to help people learn photography, given that the game environment is uniquely suited to the visual attributes of photography. Well, we have this wonderful 3D game technology with free development software. Let's use it to introduce people to the wonderful world of photography in a fun and interactive way. Well, if you're interested in the project, why don't you join us up on the Project GBPL Discord server. The link is in the description of this YouTube presentation. Hey, thanks a lot for joining me. Appreciate you being here. You have a great day. Bye-bye.